Welcome to the main manor house. Unfortunately, we can't actually go to the house because the bridge access to the island is currently under maintenance. However, we can get quite a good idea from around the edge of the moat. So let's see what it actually looks like. These grass-top ruins were constructed just after the Norman conquest. And what's left of them is basically the foundation of the manor house. So unfortunately the bridge is broken. However, the house was built by the Penhallam family in the 13th century, and by the name I can imagine they were probably brought over by the Normans during the Norman conquest. It is actually a moated manor, which is very uncommon in the southwest, and therefore it is quite rare. The Decardahams were minor barons, and they made their fortune with King John. And he was about, after William John, or whatever it goes. So Robert Fitzwilliam, Lord of the Carterhams, seems to have been John's principal agent in Cornwall, which was quite important at the time. And this is where he lived, basically. However, the house soon fell into ruin by the 14th century, and shortly after that, it turned into what we can see today. Life in the Middle Ages was hard work and laborious. Most people were peasants at that time, and they worked on land owned by the aristocracy, people who lived in these houses. It was hard, and by the 20th... this is a floor plan of what the manor looked like before it fell into ruin, and the colours show you which bit was built when. Life during the Middle Ages was hard work and laborious. Most people were peasants at the time, and the land they worked on was owned by the aristocracy. By the 12th century, however, changes were in action. People back then were extremely religious, but it wasn't a very nice place to live either. People would pour their waste or feces out of windows if you lived in a town, and crime was extremely common. So if you left your apples outside, I don't think they'd be there for very long. That could explain why this house specifically had a moat, because they wanted to keep the peasants out of where the richer people lived. The church isn't necessarily Norman. It is in the Norman architecture, and there probably would have been a church here that is Norman. Norman presence, however, is common in the area, since there is a Norman fort nearby, which we know that is Norman. Norman conquest took place from 1066 to 1071. The Domesday Book was a part of the Norman conquest, and it was records of property and ownership in England, and it was completed in less than a year. It was originally called the Winchester Book. It had been expensive to invade England for William, but William and the other nobles had to track who owned what, and they did this in the book. Three key values and uses of the Domesday Book was land ownership, the value of a state, and taxation for William. This era is known as the Middle Ages.